Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, renewable energy, autonomous driving, and much, much more. My name is Bodhi, and I am your host. And on today's episode, I had a chance to sit down with Sloan Paul and Tom Chep, who are the founders of Arc Motors. Arc Motors is doing some really cool stuff with converting internal combustion engine vehicles to ICE vehicles. And a lot of their vehicles that they're converting are classic cars. So Sloan is ARC's CEO, and she comes from a background in like business strategy and product marketing. She worked for Microsoft for nearly a decade. She brings this unique blend of the tech world and combines that with the passion for not only sustainability, but for EVs. And then Tom is the chief technology officer. He's got some serious engineering chops. He's worked at Westinghouse, Rolls-Royce, Toyota. He's the one making sure that the performance of the vehicles matches the promise, right? He has, like, you will hear about some of the technology that they use when they do these conversions, but it's not just slapping a battery in the vehicle and calling it good. There's a lot that goes in this. So in this episode, we're going to talk about how Arc Motors got started. We're going to talk about some of their early builds and a few of their challenges and how they were able to overcome them. And if you happen to be one of those folks that's into both EVs and classic cars, you're gonna really enjoy this episode. Which, by the way, this episode is brought to you by Dave L, Lynn Y, Frank P, and Brian S. So this episode would not be possible without their generous support. If you'd like to join them, go to supportkilowatt.com and you'll see all of the different ways you can support the show. All right. Let's go ahead and welcome Sloan and Tom to the show.
Thanks for having us. Really happy to be here.
Happy to have you. How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing well. Pretty chaotic here. So
All right. Well, we'll get you dialed in and out so you can get back to the chaos. I wanted to start off just by asking a little bit about each of your background, and then we'll talk more about Arc Motors. So starting off with you, Sloan, can you give us a little bit about your background and what you did before Arc Motors?
Yeah, so my background actually doesn't have anything to do with the motive world at all. I actually started off, to university. I have a pop culture degree. I love music and film and television, everything like that. But I spent over 15 years working in tech. Previously, prior to ARC, I spent over a decade in the tech world at Microsoft, leading on global teams and working with performance marketing in the consumer and commercial world. And that's really where I, developed my more of entrepreneurial skills because I was working in the field for the Canadian market mostly. And then was able to see, a gap in the market for, electric conversions and in the EV space. And that's where I came up with the idea for ARC. So we can dive into that a little bit more.
For sure. And how about you, Tom?
so I've been an engineer for almost 15 years, working in almost every industry. An engineer can work in manufacturing, construction, automotive. I worked for Toyota down in Kentucky for a bit there. And then most recently, prior to this, I was working in nuclear, working with teams globally to develop sort of micro reactors for off-grid applications where they're just burning diesel. And then got pulled into this chaotic world of electric vehicles.
And Tom, what discipline in engineering were you? Electrical engineer, is that right?
Yeah, I'm electrical. That's my main background. But I do have some training in mechanical as well. Not my expertise, so I bring in other mechanical engineers to deal with that stuff here.
Yeah, no, engineering is multifaceted for sure. So that brings us to Arc Motors. We'll start with you, Sloan. Tell us what Arc Motors is, and then we'll kind of delve more into how you started the company.
So ARC Motors is interesting because it constantly evolves into something else because they're always because I guess because it's Tom and I, we're constantly looking at like, hey, we can definitely do this, and seeing problems and seeing how we can evolve and, pivot off that. It's been very interesting. But we started off of seeing a gap in the market of like, hey, electric vehicles in the classic car world. I love classic cars. I just love the history, the design, everything about them. But they are, you know, um, they smell. They're loud. And those are the things that many people do love. And when I got into this, I had a 1969 Ford Bronco, and I was driving it downtown Toronto, and it was just attracting all this attention for all the wrong reasons. And that is when I looked at Tom and I said, "Hey, I want to start this electric conversion company where we electrify classic cars." And that's how ARC came to be. We focused on the Bronco at first because that's what I had at that point in time. That we actually became specialists in converting Broncos because that was our prototype, and that is what got all of the attention for us. And then we just got a bunch of 4x4s from different clients. But we do focus on classic cars at most. We don't bring in new vehicles because they're definitely really hard to electrify. But then we started doing restorations as well because a lot of the customers are coming to us. They're like, hey, I really want to electrify this, but if I'm going to electrify this and spend a lot of money on the batteries and parts and labor, I want to make sure that the car is in, great mechanical shape. And also I want it to look great. Like, can we fix the paint job? Can we do all this? So, we partner with some folks who can come in and, do the interior, do the exterior and all that good work. So we're really like a one stop shop for everything now, for anything related to restorations as well as electric conversions.
Great. And Tom, what was your interest in starting Arc Motors?
So my sister asked me to do this, and at the time, there
Oh yeah, we're
really
siblings. I forgot to mention that. Tom's my brother.
Yes, yes.
so got asked to do it, and there really wasn't much info at the time. So I was hesitant at first, but then as I dug into it more, it became apparent that there was this kind of gap in the market. There was this um, need to fulfill this kind of service. Um, so from a business perspective and from a technology and interest perspective, um, that kind of brought me into it.
Was this kind of like, oh, I'd like to do this for me, and it was kind of a hobby or a little bit of a passion that grew into a business, or did you already have a business plan in mind when you started restoring your Bronco?
Well, it started off as a hobby. Like, it started off as a passion. I just fell in love with the Ford Broncos. And this is really at the time when they were just taking off. Like, they were super hot in the market. You had like Velocity Restorations, Icon, vintage Broncos, just restoring these and selling them for like $250,000, $300,000. They just became like these like beautiful like Kleenex boxes on wheels is what we call them because they're just square, right?
Yeah.
So I acquired one, and that's when I restored the '69. But I thought that we could actually just take it like to the next step, and at that time there wasn't a lot of classic vehicles being electrified. There was only a couple. So it did start off as a passion and a hobby, but then there weren't. I wanted to electrify my vehicle, but then there was like I think like two outfits in the U.S. that electrified classic cars, and then I called them to see if they could actually electrify my Bronco, but there was like a 5-year wait list, and at that time, like the parts were just they were just salvaged parts from like Tesla, right? And I just knew that it was still early days. Like there weren't any like, companies like Ampere or Felton making these like sophisticated systems that you could put into a classic car at that time. So I knew it was just a really great opportunity to jump in and learn how to basically build an EV from scratch, just throwing a classic car body on top of it. So it became a business, because we were one of the first to do it, and then we could grow and become subject matter experts in it.
And was when you were doing your Bronco, did you see a lot of interest from other people who were like, "Oh, I'd like to do that as well"?
We saw so much. Like, in terms of press and everything, we got like over 300 million media impressions. We got covered all over North America. We got, we were also recognized as like RBC Climate Action Heroes. We were in the QuickBooks campaign for innovative startup. So we got a lot of like recognition from people, from individuals, but also like institutions that are already widely recognized. So yeah, we got tons of inquiries. The only problem we had like over we had hundreds of leads of people emailing like, "Can you electrify our vehicle?" um, the bottleneck at that time is the price, right? It's because it's so new. The technology is so new. We're paying so much money for batteries. But yeah, we got so much attention.
Yeah, that definitely validates a business idea when you get 300 million media impressions for
Yeah.
sure. Tom, can you walk us through what an ARC EV conversion looks like from customer contact, and maybe Sloan could do customer contact. I'm not sure how you know you both interact with customers, but from contact to delivery, what does that process look like?
So from initial contact, it's very straightforward. It's what do you have and what do you want out of it. Um, and from there, we have a conversation about feasibility, about budget, and if everything aligns, then we'll bring the vehicle in. Um, and it starts off with sort of mechanical assessment, making sure the vehicle's fit and safe. So that's the forefront of it, and we do a lot of structural around those things. But then we'll strip the vehicle, um, strip it, and then we'll 3D scan it completely. And then we spend a good chunk of our time in model space, actually, um, kind of fitting the components and routing sort of the cables and the hosing to figure out what we can do. Because none of these components are built for vehicles. They come like batteries come in big giant rectangle boxes, and um, the motors are small, fortunately, so they can kind of almost go anywhere. Um, and then and then after design, we just start fabricating all the subframes to hold everything up, align it with the vehicle. We check weight and balance and typical vehicle engineering around it. So there's a lot more design and engineering time than you would think. Not as much of the sort of hack and slash rest of mod shop that you would expect to see based on like TV shows that go into that kind of thing. Um, so then once everything's fitted, we do startup testing. We get it functional. We convert all of the vehicle side components as well, like AC, alternator, things that were belt driven now have to become electric. Power steering, for example, brake booster. Get all those systems functional, and then you have an electric conversion from ARC.
And on your website, that says 2 to 3 months. And I watched a YouTube video, and I believe you had said in the video that most of that time is doing the actual like modeling and planning of the build, right?
Mm,
It takes actually relatively little time to put the components in, but you want to make sure that the vehicle's sound before you put those components in.
that's right.
What are some of the typical, or maybe even some not so typical challenges when doing an EV conversion? And I would imagine on some level there's the technical challenges, but then there's also like there's probably some education that has to take place for the customer. So Sloan,
Mhm.
why don't you take the education part, and when you're setting expectations, what's a realistic expectation for a customer, and then Tom will have you talk about the technical stuff.
Tom kind of touched upon it. It really is the education of like how these electric conversions work, and we actually have this in the FAQ on our website. It's not, everybody calls EV system a kit. Like they'll email us like, "Hey, do you have a kit for your let's say like an FJ40, like a Toyota one?" And we're like, "No, we don't have a kit because." We order systems, right? We order systems from Ampere and everything like that. And that's why we do the 3D scan because we have to make sure that, there's like 3 or 4 battery packs that fit in. Like we have 100 kilowatt hour systems or 80 kilowatt hour systems or 40 kilowatt hour systems. It really depends what they can fit. Because there's so much engineering that goes into this, that's the education that is required is that we are essentially re-engineering your vehicle. We're going in and we're making sure that it can withstand the power of the torque, the horsepower, like everything behind that, and that it's safe and up to standards, like the guidelines that Tom uses as an electrical engineer and our team uses as mechanical engineers and so forth, right? So that's really what goes into the education part of it and what folks don't know. And then they'll come back to us and be like, well, it costs why does it cost so much money? It's because we are re-engineering your vehicle, right? You're getting a brand new vehicle and it's going to drive like an OEM. You're going to get sport mode. You're going to get like the eco mode. You're going to get all those things. And then when you finish the vehicle, there is a lot of testing. There's like 100 to 300 hours of testing that goes into it to make sure that everything is just smoothed out on our end as well. We also have clients like fly in and they test their vehicle and they're like, "No, I actually don't like this. I don't like that," and then we customize it to the customer. So we're very much a premium like engineering house versus like a mechanical shop. So that's how we are and that's how we educate our customers so there's some misconceptions around that and how we operate. But before we become a client, it's really the price is the biggest one, the timing and the work that we do. But I'll pass it on over to Tom when it comes to like the actual engineering portion.
So the technology's improved dramatically, sort of leaps and bounds when we first started uh, for our first conversion. Our very first conversion was, like Sloan said, it was salvaged Tesla parts and then off the shelf components meant for industrial application that we just kind of force wedged into a vehicle to make it work. Um, since then, um, these sort of homebrew conversions have become far more closer to OEM grade components and holistic systems that are all integrated together and speak well over CAN bus. So the technology and the process behind implementing the technology has become very sort of straightforward, if you will. There's sort of a standard set of options that we now lean on because that just makes it a better experience for the customer in the end. Um, there's no headaches or no possible failures because um, of these components that weren't fully vetted and tested at OEM grade levels. Um, so the convergence side of it, technology, is not as complicated as someone might think anymore. And that's that. So the harder part of it is really the customizing of getting those components into the vehicle and making sure that it's sound and safe structurally and balanced and can drive like a vehicle and handle the forces of the road.
Can you think of one example where you're just kind of hitting a wall and something you had to do to overcome that? Because we have a lot of engineers that listen to this show, so I think they'd be interested in your experiences there.
Um, most of the challenges we've had have been around the design of it, the balance of the vehicle. Um, in the system side, challenges come from the integration and the communication of all the components individually. Um, behavioral things, I suppose, where you are trying to get something to, well, so it's just like 100 little cuts, if you will, 100 cuts of challenges that come at you when you convert it. There's like a massive thing that stops you in your tracks. It's just a bunch of little things all sort of all at once.
And then I saw in one of the videos you had like a 1970s Toyota Corolla,
Yeah.
right? And then you're doing these Ford Broncos, and you had a couple muscle cars in the shop. Is there anything drastically different that you have to do? Because even though in comparison to today's compact cars, a 1970s Corolla is going to be bigger,
Mhm.
right? It's not as big as I think you had a Firebird in
Yeah.
there. It's not going to be quite the same. You're not going to be able to put as many batteries, or maybe you have to be a little bit more efficient with what components you put in that Corolla. Can you talk about that a little bit?
It always boils down to the battery and the range the customer wants. Because we can't replace the floor with batteries like current EVs are produced. You kind of just stick them where they fit, and wherever they fit really dictates how much battery you can put in there. So we'll get customers coming in and saying like, I want OEM level 500 miles of range, right? And you go, well, we can't physically fit that into your vehicle. And then there's diminishing returns as well, right? Because batteries are heavy and the weight directly inverses the range you can go because of how much weight you're pushing. Um, so that's often the challenge in terms of everything else. It's kind of become standardized. There's gonna be major components that are the same across every vehicle, and that just comes down to where that can fit. And we get really creative with our 3D scan and design to fit those pieces in. So it really all comes down to the batteries and the customer desire and the expectations. Um, we don't we often undersell the projected range of the vehicle, and we don't expect customers that come to us currently with the current technology um, to take these things cross country. Right? They're luxury classic vehicles. We The expectation is that you get a nice pleasant ride in the afternoon, down to the lake or something and back, and that's it.
What is the typical range that someone might see? You can undersell it if you want.
So in the smallest pack that we offer, it's usually around, depending on a number of factors, it's usually around 200 miles. Um, the smallest pack, and then the biggest pack. Well, not the biggest pack because you can just keep going with batteries, right? But you can get upwards of 400 miles if you really pack in a lot in there.
Okay. And then Sloan, what does one of these EV conversions start at? Because I know it's going to really depend on the condition of the vehicle. So what's a general starting price that people can think of?
So if you just come into us, like into the shop, and you're like, okay, well, I have like a totally mint VW bug, right? Nothing needs to happen to it. I'm cool with like 100 miles. It'd probably start at like 95,000. You're looking at like the system. It's probably going to be, I don't know, 50,000 to 65,000, and then we look at the labor and the shipping and everything like that. So that's how much it would generally start at. But it can go upwards of like 200,000 or more, depending what you want to add to it. Like we have a hard time saying no to our customers. Like we will, if they're like, hey, I want a center console with like a pop up, Apple CarPlay. We're like, yeah, we're on it. Just send it to us and we'll get it for you. Cause we just, we're already doing it. And like generally our customers aren't really tech savvy. They're usually like business owners or entrepreneurs. So we're like, yeah, we just want to make them happy and we want to make sure that they have something that they're super happy with. But yeah, it really depends on what your budget is and what is it that you want.
And then, so this is a very niche market, right? Obviously, your customers are going to come at you with all sorts of different questions and requests, I should say. What is kind of, and this could apply to anything, it doesn't have to do with just customers, but what has surprised you the most about this kind of business?
What surprised me the most is if you really want it, you'll get it, right? So if we go back to the Toyota Corolla as an example, the customer actually came to us with the numbers matching like 1969 Ford Mustang. It's like, okay, this is what I want to do. And then he actually backpedaled. He's like, actually, no, I don't want to do this to my Ford Mustang. I want to keep it numbers matching and I want to keep it, like as an ICE vehicle. We're like, totally, that's fine. And he's like, but actually, I've always loved the Toyota Corolla, like 1975 Toyota Corolla. I've had two. I've sold them off. My biggest regret. Can you find me a 1975 Toyota Corolla? And I will electrify that. We were like, are you sure? Because every vehicle that came into our shop is at least $100,000 or more. A Toyota Corolla, Bodhi, is $15,000 USD. And when you do an electric conversion, our quote for him was over $100,000 USD, and he's Canadian. So you can imagine how much that was in Canadian dollars. And it did not matter to him. So I went on Facebook Marketplace and I found one in Florida, had it shipped over. All in all, it was under $20,000. And he's going to put over $100,000 USD into it because we have to take care of it. The seats were slashed, like everything. And he was like, this is the most perfect vehicle ever. And he's 6'5" or more. I think he's taller than that, Tom. And so he got into it and he was the happiest person I've ever seen. And so to me is like, if you have the means, it doesn't matter how much you're spending on it, because at the end of the day, um, it's really what makes your heart happy. And that you can't really put a price on happiness. I think to me, that's the biggest surprise that I've seen. I don't know, Tom, what about you? Would it be like the truck? One of the customers coming in and spending a lot of money on that, and it's like completely almost rotted out.
Um, I think it's sort of similar vein. A lot of our customers make all kinds of requests, and the means is never a topic. It just make it happen. That's it. Tell me how much.
Yeah.
That is a really interesting business to be in, because it kind of removes in a you got to do this responsibility, but it removes some of the constraints that you might have, and then you can use those experiences further down the line and whatever you're building.
Yeah, sometimes. Because there's also times where we have customers who are similar to us. We don't have the buying power. And, sometimes there's customers who are just close enough to like, I just want it to be electrified, but I don't have that money. And you want to make it, for me, I want it to make eventually I want it to be as accessible as possible. But that I can't do that on my own, because it's a game of when will the parts come down in cost, right? But eventually, hopefully, these parts will cost less, and we can make it happen for more people.
Yeah, and I think when I first started doing this podcast in 2016, I don't quite know how many parts Tesla was making on its own, but it was a lot, right? And now we've got a huge industry that is built up around electric vehicles. So for sure, it's going to come down, and might even start seeing specific kits. Like I know, like my wife, when she was in college, she rented a room from a family, and they're like, "Hey, we have this old Land Rover or Land Runner, Toyota. Yeah, it was a Toyota. Do you want to drive it around? Because we don't use it. We just have it, and it's in our spare garage." My wife was like, "Okay, cool." Now I can't imagine what that car costs. I could say $30,000, but it's probably low. Like, and
Yeah.
they were just like, "We just have an extra car. Do you want to use it when you're living here?"
Wow. The
Yeah.
fact
So
that
it
they had a
meant.
spare garage is what got me.
Well, yeah, they had a two-car garage, and then they had it was like almost not quite a shed. It was bigger than a shed, and that's where they kept the Toyota. But yeah, uh, it was definitely a spare garage. I don't want to oversell the house that they were living in. It was very nice. It just wasn't spare garage nice. But yeah, that's really interesting. Tell us, Sloan, a little bit, because you first electrified your Bronco, and now you're selling Arc electric Broncos. Tell us a little bit about
Mhm.
that.
So when we brought the Bronco in, it was a very hot vehicle at the time. So that's really what got a lot of attention. And we did it on purpose because it was a hot vehicle, and to have it electrified I knew that it was got a lot of attention because, I'm a marketer um at heart, and that's what my training is. But we also got a lot of people coming up to us like, "Can I just buy this Bronco off of you?" Right? Can you just build me a Bronco? I don't have one. I can't source one. They're very difficult to get, especially in Canada. Can you just, build one for me? So it was an opportunity for us to say, hey, instead of just bringing a Bronco to us, we can just source one for you. We have a couple that are just like sitting at the shop, and we can just build one for you to your specs. And that's where we came up with the Arc Electric Bronco. And we actually partnered with an incredible company who have shown up on the Jay Leno Garage show many times. They're called Kinser Chassis. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they built a skateboard platform, which means that you already know what a skateboard platform is if
Hmm.
you listen to this podcast. But it was powerful, like 94 kilowatt hour battery system. And we could easily just drop our Bronco on top of it, right? And so we went down to Tennessee and we visited their shop, and I got into their electric Bronco and I drove it, and I was floored. I've never driven, like comparing it to our prototype, which was basically Tesla batteries, like golf cart parts. Like we're not even lying because we built it so long ago. To like driving this like modern machine, it was incredible. And we're like, if we can just put our Broncos on top of these chassis, like we're just gonna like take over the world. It's incredible. It was like driving like my Genesis GV60 that I have now. It was incredible. So we partnered with them to offer this up as a product to anybody who wants to purchase an incredible classic vehicle that drives like a modern vehicle.
What are your thoughts on it, Tom?
Yeah, like when we started the business, margins are very slim because everything was super custom and it took forever to do each and every vehicle. So, quickly realizing, not having run a business before, now that you run a business, profit comes in reputability and streamlining and standardizing everything. So it was no brainer to partner with someone that's already developed something that we can just use and ship at OEM grade and high quality and standardize enough that it doesn't have to be us um, maintaining or repairing all the time.
Yeah, no, that's a lot for
Mhm.
sure. What's the price on the Arc electric Bronco?
So the Arc Electric Bronco starts at 329,000 USD. And that's just like a custom job. So you come to us, you tell us what your paint color you want, the interior that you want, and that's on par with everything else that you see. Like if you think of like the custom shops that do like ice Broncos, they start at around 250, $260,000. So to have it electrified and just be a powerhouse, it's pretty great price.
And then I have one final question for the both of you. I'm gonna ask Tom first. What is your long-term vision for Arc?
Long term would be sort of become the household name, not in sort of like a posturing way, but when people think of electric vehicles or conversions or sort of high quality systems, it just kind of becomes known that ARC is synonymous with that.
And how about you, Sloan?
For us, starting with electric conversions has always been a way for us to learn how to build electric vehicles, like premium electric vehicles, and also to see product market fit. So, you were in like the crawl walk phase. So for us, like Tom said, hopefully we will be a name in the EV industry. So, watch out for us, I guess. Hopefully you'll see us innovating a bit more and hopefully become more of a household name.
Excellent. And I think you're off to a really good start.
Oh, thank you so much.
When Matt, I had not heard of you until Matt emailed me, and then I started looking into the company. And the sense that I got, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, because I don't have everybody on that cold emails me, but the thing is one, your siblings, but two, you both seem to care about what you're doing, and to me, that makes a good business. Like it seems like you are putting a lot of effort and time and money into your business, but you care about your customers, you care about the process, you care about the technology, and I like seeing that. So, Sloan, where can people go to see more of what Arc Motors is up to?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Bodie. We hear so much; it's crazy. But if you want to, follow our journey, you can always just follow us on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube at Arc Motor Company. That's our handle across all social platforms. You can also visit our website at arcmotors.com.
Tom, thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with us today.
No, thank you. Really appreciate your time as well.
Yeah, and Sloan, thank you as well.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been great.
All right, everybody, that's a wrap on my conversation with Sloan and Tom. A huge thanks to both of them for taking the time to come on the show and share what Arc Motors is up to. I really enjoyed hearing how they're blending this classic car culture with EV technology. Um, I have a friend who bleeds gasoline. He's got two classic trucks. They are patinaed with rust, and that's the way he likes them. They look great. He thinks that converting them to an EV is an abomination, but I'm a big fan of this. He's not. I also want to give a big thanks to Matt for setting this all up and coordinating everybody's schedules. So, Matt, thank you so much for doing that. If you want to learn more about what Arc Motors is up to, arcmotors.com. That's ARCMOTORS.com. And yeah, that's it for me. Thanks everybody for listening to this episode. If you want to email me, it's Bodie, BODIE at 918digital.com. You know what? I don't plug this enough, but there's a website that you can go to that has all of my podcasts. That's 918digital.com. And then you can find me on X at 918digital. And if you want to support the show, you can go to supportkilowatt.com. That is a mouthful. So let's go ahead and end it here. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. Thanks so much.